I drove Formula Drift ProSpec for 5 seasons, and I wanted to share lessons that I learned from a driver's perspective. This doesn't have anything to do with owning and operating a team or a crew or anything else. We're just going to focus on what you can control as a driver. Most of these don't have a particular order, but the first 3 do. I think they're the most important. So the first one is you only fail when you quit. I finished 19th my first season, 11th the second season, 8th, 7th, and then finally 2nd place this season. The goal was to get my pro license in ProSpec. While winning a championship would have been nice, it was never the ultimate goal for progressing on to the top tier of the series. There are plenty of drivers that quit well before they achieve that goal, and I could have very easily quit along the way, and I would have considered my time in ProSpec a failure for not having achieved my goal. But because I didn't quit, because I reinvented myself every single year, I ultimately succeeded in what I was trying to do with drifting. So that goes into reevaluating your entire program every year and making improvements. That's something that I would do every single year, whether that was car, that was team, that was myself as a driver. What could I do to improve all of those aspects? And that's something that really worked and showed noticeably different results year over year. Mental game. Mental game is just so important. It wasn't something that I figured out until this year, especially at FDNJ, for example. That was a track that I was able to do very well at the E-Town Gambler Series, but when it came to the ProSpec round, I would make mistakes that I shouldn't have. So it really came down to treating FDNJ as just another gambler competition. That's what I ended up telling myself, and that's what clicked. By treating it as just another competition versus Formula Drift, it alleviates a lot of pressure off yourself and helps you drive to the best of your abilities. You need a simulator first and foremost. I always laughed how the pro guys complained that they wouldn't get their 10 or 11 practice laps in versus ProSpec. We barely get 6 or 7 laps before competition starts. The thing is, you can basically supplement the lack of practice in real life with having a proper simulator, not the cheap stuff. You need to spend real money and buy good simulation equipment if you want to be successful in pro or ProSpec. You must drive a ton outside of Formula Drift for your skill level to improve dramatically. And you need a practice car. And your practice car can't just be some stock 350Z, E46, FRS, whatever. It needs to be comparable to your pro car. My practice car is my FDRX7. It makes 390 wheel versus my pro car makes 835, but they are both V8 platforms. They're both gripped up and drive very similarly. Both are front rack, and they also both have Fortune coilovers. Having that practice car is really critical to improving your skill outside of the 4 ProSpec rounds or the 8 pro rounds. You should be able to drive well in all conditions. It's a big separator between the East Coast and West Coast guys and girls because the West Coast just doesn't have rain. When you have tricky conditions, whether they're patchy or wet, East Coast driving really gives you an advantage in the pro level of competition. You have to show up with proper equipment, not some hodgepodge piece of junk, and expect to win. I see plenty of people, again, bring kind of the same crappy car and they have mechanical failures and they lose and they wonder what happened. Having the best car doesn't mean you're going to win, but it will give you the best chance at winning. Appearance is super important, from team gear to custom suit. Look, this is a professional gig. You need to dress the part. I think it's really important to put on a professional appearance, and I do get complimented on this a lot, but I honestly don't think about it too much because it's just the bare minimum. So be on time for drivers meetings. FD is a professional series. So that's like a big culture shock for some people, is you go from Pro-Am or grassroots events, and they honestly, not very many of them are run very well. FD always starts on time. They expect you to carry yourself in a professional manner, and for some that can be pretty jarring, which good. I think you need to learn how to act accordingly. Otherwise, what are you doing as a professional driver? But don't be scared to ask questions if you don't understand. I used to ask questions a lot in drivers meetings because I honestly was a bit nervous and I wanted to fully understand what was going on. But I think a lot of people hold back because they're scared they're going to appear like they don't know what they're doing or whatever, and like, who cares? At the end of the day, we're there for results. If asking questions will help you get those results, you should do it. Don't forget your gear. Seems like an obvious one, but there were times where I've seen people forget their helmets or gloves, or maybe I forgot my arm restraints once, had to buy some new ones. But it's super easy to forget your stuff, but you can't do that. Getting to the front of the line for practice really does matter. A couple years ago, there used to be races effectively to get first place in line for practice. And it really does matter because you would end up getting at least maybe 2 or even 3 more laps of practice than everybody else if you were the first car in line. Because by the time you factor in crashes, engine blowups, all that other stuff, it takes away from everybody's practice. So if you get in line first, you're going to have the most amount of practice. Now they've kind of changed the rules and you can line up whenever, but regardless, you want to be one of those first couple of cars in line in order to maximize your practice time. Overall fitness does matter. Stamina, super important, especially in those rounds in July and August where temperatures exceed like 100 degrees plus. It's brutal inside the car, and if you don't have the fitness for it, you're not going to do well. And you can survive at the lower levels of the sport because most race days are single day events. But the problem with Formula Drift is that they are multiple days. There's a setup day, there's a practice day, and there's a competition day. So by the time competition day rolls around, if you aren't in good shape, you're going to feel horrible and probably drive horrible. And that's exactly what happened to me my first couple of years. Watch how the pro drivers navigate the course and copy accordingly. I was Kazuya Taguchi's spotter for a couple of years, and I paid really close attention to how every single pro driver drove, where I was understanding what they were doing and then I was copying that into my own driving, and it really helped. Loosen up your car. You want it to be as drivable as possible. This is something that plenty of pro and ProSpec drivers fail to do. Sometimes they dial in too much grip into their car, it's not drivable, and they can't complete the course the way the judges want you to. And it seems super obvious, but you actually just want it to be as drivable as possible. If you make it as difficult as possible to drive, you're not going to win. If there's something in your setup you are driving around, you need to fix it. Whether it's a gear issue, the way your steering feels, all of those are possible failure points for you to make a mistake. And if you are trying to drive around something, that means your car is not performing the way you want it to drive, which means it's not going to drive predictably, which means you are not going to drive predictably, and you are probably going to lose. Advocate for yourself as a driver. If the car feels off, you have to speak up. This is something I struggled with earlier on in my ProSpec career. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be feeling, and I wasn't super confident in everything that I was experiencing as a driver, so I didn't know when to speak up. Now, if the car doesn't feel the way I want it to feel, I will speak up and I will make a really good case for why we need to look at something, even if it's a pain in the butt. And oftentimes it turns out I'm right. The car isn't doing what it should be doing, and we find a bigger issue that we're able to resolve in practice versus an actual battle. And by doing this, you are basically decreasing the chances of you having a mechanical failure in battle. And lastly, ignore the drama. There are going to be people that like you, that don't like you, that talk crap behind your back, but who cares? It really doesn't matter as long as you are doing the best that you can and getting the results that you are trying to achieve. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you are a ProSpec driver, that you are taking some of these lessons that I learned and applying them to next season. I'm really excited to transition to pro. I think a lot of these lessons are definitely applicable, and I am ready for the challenge.